So I'm joined by Bobby Donald, who is an awesome UK motion designer who does a great job incorporating traditional illustration and what would you call it, Bobby? What would the best way to define it? I would define it as like traditional illustration, but I know on your website you also list it as like hand drawn. So how would you define your style?
I struggle with this a bit, but I usually say on my website it says effects and illustration. I love doing effectsy stuff, especially effects that revolve around kind of a hand-drawn look, procedural fake cells kind of stuff that looks a bit like cell animation, but is all done with effects in After Effects.
That's awesome. Yeah, I saw on the website that you really kind of focus on saying like you only really work in After Effects. A lot of the rest of the stuff is done through hand-drawn work. However, there are like a few points where you kind of dip into Photoshop as needed, right?
That's right, yeah. And sometimes I'll build a scene with 2D layers in Photoshop, and then I'll do After Effects in all for all the movement. Like at the moment, for example, just before the call, I'm making a river where it's a static cam, no camera movement, and all the background, like the grass and the rocks, is all going to be Photoshop static layers, and then the river itself is all going to be noise, starting off with noise in After Effects and like fake turbulence. So that's the stuff I kind of like to nerd out on.
Awesome, man. Yeah, so we kind of met through the Motion Collabs group, and that's kind of really when I first got to experience a lot of your work and things like that. And it's very unique. Like it's very easy to kind of pick you on social media. Like when your stuff kind of appears in the feed, it's like, I know that's Bobby Donald. Like I know it is. It's that very specific style. But let's kind of jump into it. So like what kind of got you into motion graphics to begin with?
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for that. I appreciate you saying my work's unique. So started as a graphic designer at a fintech company. First role in that was an internship, and then I did more and more for that company, and eventually got sort of poached by a much larger company that did similar kind of stuff. But for that larger company, I was doing graphic design and motion design, but it was nothing like the stuff that people know me for now. And it looks like typical graphic design for fintech companies and or any tech really. It's all flat effectors and that kind of thing. So after a while, after like 1 year, I quit the role at the big company, and with the intention to go freelance motion design. And at the time I was kind of like, I loved doing, I was already starting to do the kind of hand-drawn-y stuff that that's typical of me right now, but mostly I was just more interested in animation than I was in graphic design. And so I was stuck in a role that was primarily graphic design, but I wanted to do motion design. So that's why I left. And ever since then, I've been trying my best to make it freelance.
So you talk about how kind of like graphic design wasn't really like your vibe. Is it fair to say that you didn't really enjoy it? That it wasn't really like something you like to do first doing like animation?
I still enjoy the design aspects of motion design. A graphic design role on its own just doesn't excite me enough, and I find that my motivation is very, very closely tied with my enjoyment and interest in the actual thing I'm working on. So it just wasn't doing it for me. So that's why I had to leave.
I definitely understand that, especially working with brands that I don't know. The fintech brand you worked with was more along the lines of like some larger corporate brands where it's like it's almost templated the way you do it. Like you kind of turn your brain off at a certain point because you just know how things are going to be laid out, things like that, just changing some text. So it's kind of funny in a way that it's a bit of like a Stardew Valley kind of vibe where it's like you just kind of looked at it and said, I don't want to do this. This doesn't bring me happiness, and kind of set out for new pastures. And one of the things I'm so curious about is kind of what was your process when you began taking that kind of like handcrafted, hand-drawn style into motion? Like what was that like?
To be honest, I don't know. I always just seemed to have gravitated towards it because it could be something to do with the fact that I've always been just artsy at school, and I'm always like drawing stuff. I've never stopped drawing. I'm with literally pen and paper or pencil and paper. And so it's just like I'm seeing that kind of work and it sort of kind of melded into my taste. So like I just keep on working, and then I eventually see sort of textures and stuff that looks like the stuff I draw, and I'm like, yeah, I seem to like, double down on that a little bit. So as for like what it's like, I don't really have an interesting answer to that. I guess I'm answering more the question of why things went that direction more than like what it's like working in that area. It's still kind of new. This isn't entirely related, but it's still kind of like I'm still getting a feel for like that kind of look, where the commercial viability of it, and finding a client base in that area, because you guys all see me posting that stuff, but the actual kind of work that I get, although it's slightly changing, but the work I typically get isn't directly in that niche. It's more in the past. It's been like more towards classic corporate stuff, like the stuff I did in my full-time role. It's only now just beginning to get more clients in for that's more like effectsy and in terms of like hand-drawn textured stuff. There's virtually no clients in that area yet. It's more about, like, for example, some recent gigs I did was there's this guy who's recognized my effects stuff, and he wants to do these kind of visualizations of stuff that's going on in the brain. He's experimenting with this new learning technique that kind of combines animation and sound, and it was my effects work that attracted him to me. So that's kind of like the first beginnings of a client that's come to me because of that. And then also like because the stuff I do is more illustrative, there's also been video game clients that are starting to come to me. For example, there's a studio called Moon Colony a while ago that they're making a game called Glide Out, and it's like a 2D side scroller game, and they're focusing on like the illustration first and like how it looks, and they decided to make a previs of the game. So that was all done in After Effects, and they hired me for character animation and effects work to make it kind of to bring the game to life. So those are the first beginnings of client work in that area, but it's still early days for me. And I don't know about you, but it's been quite the struggle in the past 2 years. The word on the street, and I think it's true, is that the industry, at least for us, is taking a serious downturn at the moment, and it's been tough to especially if you're a freelancer, because people are cutting back.
It definitely feels like budgets are tightening. It also feels, from my point of view, it feels like there is a pretty heavy saturation of motion designers at this point. And so really now more than ever, it's important to kind of define your personal style while also having that versatility, like what you're mentioning, where you can still take on this kind of corporate projects every now and then. One of the things that I really found interesting was I saw your post in Reddit actually about the visual development you did for that game. And a lot of people in the comments really thought like After Effects was how the game was going to be built.
Yeah.
I really thought that was kind of interesting.
It's interesting. Loads of with that post, not just on Reddit, but everyone. There was lots and lots of engagement. Lots of people asking that same question that you just mentioned, which is like, are you using this After Effects work as part of the real game engine in some way? So the short answer is no. It's a purely visual thing where it's just making a trailer for the game. It's completely separate from any game engines. As far as I'm aware, you can say, for example, I did some torches in the background, and they're kind of like these 8-second looping animations, and you can turn those things into sprites, and then they go on a sprite tree, and then those can be used in a 2D game engine. But apart from that, for example, all of my character animation, that will have to be redone when it comes to the making of the actual game.
When working with that team, were there any kind of restrictions in regard to like, hey, we can't do this in the engine, so we kind of want to avoid anything like this? Or was it like we have to stick to a certain, design layout or anything like that because that's only what they can do in the engine or anything like that?
No engine specific, like they still haven't got developers on board at that stage. So they're at the stage where they're a concept art studio, so they're primarily, like, one of their strengths is that they can make stuff just look really nicely polished and illustrated and everything. So they're coming at it from they might not necessarily think of it this way, but they were sort of thinking visuals first, and if we can really sell this game to investors, then we can we've got a support that we can then start going to developers and thinking how we actually build this. So in answer to your question, there was no one there to say, no, you can't do this, you can't do this. Because they haven't got the technical team behind to do all that kind of thing yet. But yeah, they were keeping it in mind. And the game isn't so complicated that I'm not making these insane turbulent rivers and waterfalls and stuff. So it was just it was classic. A bit of an atmospheric fog and torches burning in the background. Nothing too complicated that would have serious technical implications for a game engine.
That's cool to know that the flames are just an 8-frame animation in the background. So one of the projects that you worked on that I really liked was the Lord of the Rings intro trailer. That was really cool. Can you kind of walk us through a little bit, what was that like to create that? I know it's a fan project, but are those the kind of projects that you're looking to kind of take on?
Absolutely, yeah, 100%. That's exactly the kind of work that I want to do. And so I've heard time and time again about when choosing personal projects, you want to try and make the work that you want to do. So it's like that phrase in I think it's in the Freelance Manifesto where he writes it 3 times, nobody's going to pay you for something you haven't already done. And then it's just that again and again and again. So with that project, it was up until now, it's the longest personal project I've ever done. And for those who haven't seen it, it's the audio taken from the film for that Fellowship of the Ring of Galadriel narrating. It all started with the forging of the Great Rings, and then she says for the dwarfs, for the elves, and then the One Ring. So it's just her voiceover, same audio as the film, same music as the film, but I've animated everything. So it's using sort of all of the 2D tricks that I've learned up until that point. There's lots of fire, there's lots of sort of welding, pouring of sort of these molten lines into the rings, making the rings, lots of magic effects and loads of hand-drawn stuff, and it's making it look as if it's been drawn by ancient. There's lots of illustration, lots of effects. So that was that was my big thing for. God, it stretched over a year. That it took so much longer than I expected. I was expecting I time all my personal projects, and my longest one up until then was 90 hours, and I expected the Lord of the Rings to take about roughly 120, 150 hours. It turned out to 260 hours.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's just an unreal amount of time. I was exhausted by the end of it, so it's I didn't have much gas in the tank left to do all of the promotion stuff that might have helped it go even further. But yeah, it's really happy with how it turned out, and fortunately it was well received. On the probably best reception was the Lord of the Rings subreddit. They loved it there. Yeah, just lots and lots of questions and engagement from that, and so yeah, go check it out if you haven't seen it already.
Did you ever have periods where you kind of stopped working on it for a week, came back at the end of the week, looked at your project file, and you're just I have to spend 30 minutes relearning where I put everything?
Definitely had periods where I just didn't do. I took a break from it, and yes, I think I did. Now I'm thinking about all, as you say that, these sort of horror story memories come back of just very complicated files. It taught me the hard way over and over again the importance of sort of being organized with such a complicated project, and carefully merging layers, deciding being smart with what layers I was choosing to merge. And yes, definitely points where something's left. I just left something, and every time I would think about it, it would just make my head hurt. It's pushing through those moments, even though they're painful and they're so bad at the time, they're one of those things, and I'm sure you've been through them too, and if you're a motions designer, you have these moments as well of a file gets too complicated or just difficult to work with for some reason, and you don't really feel like you're learning the lesson from it at the time because it's just hell. But I think when you've been through those few of those moments over time, you learn to just develop an instinct for when one of those moments is approaching, and you kind of go around it. You sort of have a good instinct of what is too long to do and what to attempt and what not to.
Exactly. One of the things I've seen is I would actually consider you to be a little bit more engaged on social media than quite a few motion designers. And so I kind of like to dive a little bit into that because I even see you post like tutorials on LinkedIn, things like that. How has social helped you grow your brand or attract new business?
It's been good, yeah, and I feel like it's the only thing that I personally feel like I can sustain, and that it sort of gives me a little bit of feedback and lets me feel like the kind of ball's rolling. I've been to like a networking meet recently, and I meet quite a lot of people who don't actually do that at all, and it seems, but they do fine because word of mouth. I think it's a case of working out which kind of person you are, whether you're like me and you can sustain a sort of social presence, or whether you can dedicate some time to, I don't know, regular meets, or just hooking up with people in DMs or whatever it is your channel is. But the most important thing is that you're choosing a way of doing that you can sustain. Like, I got this advice from, oh god, I forget his name now, but it's some guy who helps freelancers with the business side of things, and he told me, whatever channel you're choosing, like whatever business channel you're choosing to promote yourself, you got to make sure that you're choosing something that's you can actually sustain over a period of time, that's not going to make you miserable, basically. Because I think what a lot of people have done in the past year, and like, you've got to do it to a certain extent, but is just all they do is apply to just open job openings, and they send cold emails. And if you're spending your time doing that, you'll eventually find something. And it's like it's just the law of large numbers, that you'll eventually find something. But the process of doing that is absolutely demoralizing. And I personally can't sustain it. Like, it may actually be logical for me to be reaching out to more people in just normal applications, and in and to studios, cold emails, but I just can't. After sending so many cold emails and like doing the usual thing of like, God, it's making me feel dead inside talking about it, but I'll try. The process of writing a cold email, and going onto their website and saying, oh, I like the project you did for this, you should just let me know if you need me, and then rewriting it 4 times and making sure that you're not being too pushy and not having any open loops or anything. I'm slightly tailing off here, Slow, because
no, you're good. You're right. It is super demoralizing, because it's like, if you're already looking for like a full-time job, then job hunting is excruciating, and when you're freelancing, it's like you're 24/7 in that process of looking for a new job, essentially, because you're constantly having to reach out to people and talk to them and try to get them to answer you. And it becomes, like you said, like it's really a numbers game at that point. You're just sending out, you send out 100 emails, you might get like 3 rejections, maybe someone says maybe, and you're like, okay, cool, I hope this one works out. And then the hope is that it does work out, and you're able to grow through network connections to kind of get more clients and so forth.
For sure, yeah.
Okay, so if you have any tips or any tricks or anything like that, one thing that you would let another motion designer know on how to kind of create their own style, what would it be?
I would start by trying to focus on things that are fun and things that stimulate your curiosity. I wouldn't worry too much about what people are going to think about it, how you're going to format it for social. Just try and think about something that you're really going to enjoy. So whether that's a technique that you're curious about, a certain style that you're just interested in, the only thing that if you're in very early stages and you're not doing sort of experiments like I do yet, and you're sort of I meet a lot of people, for example, who are in that state where they're doing lots of client work. They get very tired from it. They don't have much energy for anything else. So if you really want to just make that start, then just try and focus on the funness of it, because that's the only way that you will actually have the motivation to get started on it. And don't worry about the pressure of what people think, and you don't have to post what you're making. Like, if the most important thing is that you're starting on it, and that you're having fun with it.
Again, that was Bobby Donald. Check him out on Instagram at bobby.donald, as well. You can head to his website at bobbydonald.co.uk. You'll get the full link in the description, and as well find him on LinkedIn. He is a fantastic motion designer, again, who incorporates fantastic hand-drawn and traditional art styles into his work. And go check him out.